Oh, too soon?
Well, they were all gung ho about it, and I think they got cold feet.
All right, so let's go ahead and kick the intro here.
Welcome to the new media show.
We're back.
Doing the new media show again.
People are actually going to listen to this junk.
We do it live.
We're live right now.
We'll just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live.
We just can't get enough. The new media show.
Let's go.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. Bada bing, bada boom.
The new media show. We do it live.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. We're going live.
The new media show. I'm like Adam Curry, and you're more like John C. Dvorak.
I think I am Adam Curry, and you're the old curmudgeon.
We do it live. Doing the new media show again.
The new media show.
Technology.
Woo. We make it sound so special. Hey, Rob, here we are. We're back with the new media show. We're back in the studio. We're not live at NEB.
I know. That's kind of nice. It's kind of comforting me back into our comfort zone, isn't it?
It is, and we still haven't gotten the copies. So I guess I'm going to have to go on YouTube and rip the audio off YouTube, because every time we do a live event, they seem like never wanting to get us the media. So I'll have to go jack it that way.
Well, I think, to be fair to them to some degree, I believe that they were taking raw video and they were going to wrap it with overlays and do all sorts of fancy stuff with it and then post it to their own website at the NAB. So I think that's what we're waiting for, and I'm not sure they've done that with all their other videos that they have. So I think, I think your assessment is right, that it's not as quick coming as we would like, because we're a podcast. Most of the other stuff that NAB does is not a podcast. So, we have different expectations.
Yes, indeed. And but anyway, we're back in the studio and we've got a guest today. Why don't you do the introductions?
Well, I don't know how to say this, but this guest has been someone that we've wanted on the show for, I don't know, many years. He's a longtime person running podcasting at Apple, Mr. James Boggs, and he's now left Apple, if you haven't heard, and started a new company in podcasting. So of course, that's like the hottest fodder in the world for us here on this show is, James doing something new, plus his background of running Apple Podcasts for over a decade is great fodder for us. And we're honored to have you on, James.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be here, both of you. Nice to see you again. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Go
ahead, Todd.
We were doing a little pre-talk before we started the show, and actually he was at Apple for 17 years.
So, but
That's
how
right.
long were you working on the Apple podcast, James? That's the other question.
I was running the team. You're right, for about a decade, and before that, I joined Apple in 2004 as they had soon after they had launched the music store. At that time, It was just iTunes store. It was just music, just in the U.S. And I joined what was then a small team working on content and editorial marketing programs on the store. And it was a really fun time period. We launched a bunch of great versions of the app and expanded into numerous countries. And then with iTunes 4.9, added podcast support, as you guys well know, in 2005, the summer of 2005.
Yeah.
And that's when we started to add different media types to the jukebox. And so in 2006, I had a chance to start the international service for podcasts in London, and built that sort of service, the localized editorial, the localized content provider relationships with big public networks and indie broadcasters in Europe, and then came back to manage the team in 2010.
Yeah, that's a long time to be working on that project. You've seen a lot of changes with Apple Podcasts over the years, its growth and its adoption, and its success. And I know Todd and I have been working with you and working with, your colleagues over there for many, many years. So it's I just want to say thank you for all your work over the years, working on podcasting. I know we were a little bit competitors when I was working at Microsoft on Zune. So
I would say friendly competitors.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Let's please clarify. There was no competition. Come on now. I have that artifact back here on the wall. So come on now.
It's true. I have to acquiesce to that point. Yes. Yeah. Microsoft got cold feet in the end, but. But anyway, Todd, go ahead and start off if you have something that you wanted to.
Well, there's so much stuff going on that we've missed.
Yeah.
So we definitely are going to have to take sometime today to talk about this thing that Tom Webster's doing, because he's off to new things at some point.
Right.
So
I saw that. What a an era.
Yeah. You go, what is he? Yeah. He's got something going. So
I didn't see any details about what's new. I just saw that he was departing Edison. So do you have any intel there?
No, it's Tom. Are you watching? It's at the. We expect you to break the news here,
you have
Tom.
A caller?
So I guess he's at Edison until the end of May, and then whatever's next, we'll see. I have a suspicion he's already got something big lined up. So the question is, who is he going to go work for? Or is he starting his own thing? That's the key. But it's people move on. I've had some team members at my company move on because it's a long time to work on one thing. So I guess what we should talk to you about is what are you doing, and what big decision to leave Apple and spin off and kind of do your own thing at this point, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. As we were saying earlier, it was a tremendous experience for me being at Apple for 17 and a half years, and such a long run. Obviously, the bulk of my career, and extremely formative, and having learned an incredible amount from the teammates I had there and leadership there. And then, starting to think about new challenges. And with the launch of Apple Podcast subscriptions, the paid premium vehicle for content on Apple Podcasts, it was a great moment to an inflection point to take a step back and move on to something new. And so I was up for some new challenge and new kind of change of scene in terms of work life. So got departed Apple in July of last summer, sort of mid-July, and had an amazing couple of conversations with Mr. Andy Bowers, who, like both of you, another OG podcaster from the very early days, that even before iTunes had podcast support. Andy was at Slate making shows, of course, Political Gabfest, one of the early hits on those early days of iTunes Store podcasts. And so, after he had departed Megaphone and then that sale to Spotify, he was looking for a new project. And so we got into conversation with his friend Henry Blodgett and decided to, who's of course CEO and founder of Business Insider, now Insider. And the two of them were interested in this concept that I found really fascinating too, that modular approach to show creation, segmented organization of shows. And we decided to start a new audio publishing tools company that could facilitate show creation from a kind of the segment metaphor, which is a concept that's been around, you can say, in radio programming, segments of content one after another, in TV as well. And we wanted to give a fresh look at that specifically for audio publication, use sort of digital native first approach to that. And it opens up a lot of really interesting capabilities, including the low latency publishing, which is kind of our focus. I'd be interested in both your thoughts, of course, but I see kind of latency as one of the structural, traditional weak points in the podcast infrastructure, where time between publication and consumption can be quite long, with an indexing cycle that maybe takes longer than it should, as we would all hope it should. So Spooler was kind of conceived to lean into that historical week part, that time between an event being happening, being reported, the reporting being written, recorded for audio, and then made available on demand. And could, with a new company, we close the gap between all the benefit of live, like we're live now, things are being reported and happening, emerging stories being covered, but with the advantage of being on demand. So it's never a show experience that has already started when you tune in. It's always at the beginning. It's always when you press play. So we like to describe Spooler as fresh like live radio, but on demand like podcasts, and a new capability, hopefully, right in the valuable space between those two existing mediums, and modular in nature, so that it's segmented, and it's effectively it's a really sophisticated playlist maker. And so that's our fresh take on this kind of idea, and it's super exciting to have spent a few months building it up in partnership with our CTO, another OG podcaster, Mr. Dan Benjamin, and all of his experience from Fireside and 5x5. It's an amazing team to work with. And so we spent a few months building that out, and then launched with the refresh from Insider, a new real-time audio news program from Henry's team at Insider, and Andy as head of audio there at Insider. That launched at the end of February. So it's been a great transition out of stealth for Spooler into being able to tell our story publicly.
Yeah, we got a chance to talk to Andy at Podcast Movement Evolutions, and here's the question I've got about Andy. Have you ever seen Andy mad? Because he is the most laid back guy, and
he's pretty unflappable.
I would not want to be in the zone when he did get upset, because he's always so laid back and so calm.
It's the
and
quiet ones you got to be worried
about. But
no, he's you guys probably know he was a NPR correspondent for a long time, and he was in London and Moscow, and he's the White House correspondent for a while. So I think there's a component of been there, done that makes it pretty unflappable.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I mean, it's such a fascinating product from the standpoint of how traditionally, and maybe you can explain this a little bit more, and I know Andy, I think, did a little bit as well, but kind of the use of dynamic content, right, is something that most people in the industry think about for just advertising, right? Mm-hmm. But it sounds like that could be what's going on here a little bit. I mean, are you guys creating, you updating existing files that are hosted on the server? Are you generating all new versions of episodes that are being targeted to specific types of users? I mean, I guess the tech on this is so flexible that it's hard to really pigeonhole it into a particular use case. So how are you kind of using that flexibility to your advantage?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the comment. We've taken, it's kind of interesting. We, having worked in podcasts so long, we really were sensitive to the particulars of RSS 2.0, as you guys are, being experts. And so the difference between a new episode with the fresh GUID and all of that implies in terms of indexing across all the consumption points and platforms was really a central question. And we kind of, in thinking about the design of the tool, really always reverted to our ideal first user, envisioning a high-tempo newsroom, and how do we best empower an editor who's in that high-tempo, stressful, high responsibility, high expectation environment. So that we had that inform our design, UX design, the ease and flow of the tools, the click and drag interface that we use, which is sort of one bucket of segment library content that you're dragging over in order to make on the other side. And so to your question, we reverted to how can we best empower an editor with that choice? Not that they had to really think too hard about whether, is this a new episode or not, but with the idea that is it an editorial kind of scope and scale decision to be made there, where our solution was a versioning system that we've come up with around the segments themselves. So you can, with Spooler, you can decide as an editor, is this change that I'm about to make worthy of an entire new episode, or as we call it, an edition of this podcast, or is it more like a correction, where, say, in a newspaper online, you might have maybe a number was wrong or a name was misspelled or mistaken place. So it's an update and a correction, the kind of magazine sense, where you're going to do a reprint and correct for a factual omission. So we've enabled a version system at the segment level where you can say, well, we're just making a correction to this, and that's putting a new MP3 out there, but it won't trigger a new GUID and it won't give the whole read index cycle. But if you as a listener are coming to that content without having listened to it prior, you get the better version, the improved, more clarified and more current version of that. Or as an editor, you can say, like, yes, this is a new, there's an editorially most important news story that we want to put right at the top, and then that can be that's would sort of trigger the full new episode experience, and then push out a new episode to each of the platforms and have a new pub date and all that stuff.
How are you suppressing so if it's being delivered still kind of as a traditional podcast, how are you suppressing the follow subscribe? Because you really want people to play. You don't really want this to be cached on their device.
That's true. I guess in an ideal case, we'd have that kind of authority, but we're also trying to be just good citizens of RSS 2.0. I think, like all of us here that have hosting products, so we are building to that spec, and that, even as we are looking to what the podcast 2.0 organization is doing, some very interesting suggestions about improvements to new tags and new capabilities, but being aware of the kind of state of the art with the platforms. Of course, coming from working on Apple Podcasts, I had unique insight there and was very familiar with that spec. So we wanted to make sure that Spooler was a good citizen of that world, even as we were, also launching a JSON parallel publishing pathway for our own web embed, which we have rolled out to be a kind of white labeled skinnable web player for the shows produced on Spooler. And the first use of that, of course, on insider.com/the refresh for the show that Andy launched. So we don't really, aspire or pretend to suppress the follow function. We love the people that follow the show, of course, and we want to make sure that it's a really good podcast experience. So you get when Andy and the team on Refresh publish a new full episode, a new edition, that'll index to all the platforms and present as a fresh update with all the updated pub date and the indication this is new content, which is great, and we love that.
And I think we all know that the number of people that are technically following, subscribing is going down, so more people are actively hitting play. So I think it works to your advantage, that trend of fewer people actually, using that follow or subscribe mentality and just listening on demand. So I think it plays to your advantage that probably more than 50% of your shows are probably being delivered with its current version, I would think.
Yeah, that'd be. We actually should look at that as a metric, but it's an interesting observation. I would like to know what you guys think too, but it's, do we approach more typical streaming behavior, and does that open up new technologies maybe that can help with some of the pain points of RSS being a pretty static spec? It hasn't really changed since 2005, as you guys definitely. I mean, we've made incremental. We decided as an industry there are a few incremental things, but
in as much as
we added some namespaces, but
in as much as we prodded some people like your prior employer, there's like, the RSS 2.0 initiatives. Some of those are really out there that are, probably for the geeks yet. It's like if you're watching this show on one of the podcast 2.0 apps, you can boost this episode and send us some Satoshis, but the majority of folks are not, and they don't even, the transcripts don't even follow through. So it is an uphill battle for some of that, but I'm glad you guys are supporting the initiatives, and I just hope that we get more people to push that through, and that I think that helped the space a lot. Just not from just how you guys want your consumption to go, but just everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would imagine that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna agree. A lot of cool deep thinking on the podcast 2.0 work.
Yeah, and it's as I've told, we've had some discussions over there in their Mastodon chat channel. A lot of it is still, some of the podcast 2.0 stuff feels like 2004 from a complexity standpoint.
Yeah.
And we have to break it down, and we got to make it so that the podcasters can fully appreciate and understand what the potential is, so that they can start pushing back on their hosting providers and other people to say, why aren't you doing this? It's an uphill battle, but I think we'll get there over time. But yeah, I love to see the spec expand at a little rapider rate.
Yeah.
So are your current feeds with multiple episodes, or are they primarily just one episode that you guys massage and play with to keep up to date, and then when it entirely replaces, is there a cadence to that? Is it a daily thing, or is it just based on when news is coming out, or what's your kind of cadence on updates?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have a kind of evergreen episode model for Spooler, which you can see in the RSS version, the refresh, where some of the content is going to be more longer shelf life and consumable, more with a backwards compatibility or a forwards compatibility, I guess. So it's kind of both, and it's up. The idea of Spooler would be to empower the editor to choose whether there's older content episodes for consumption kind of from the archive in the feed, or if it's just the latest stuff with a single episode. But typically it'll be a single episode that's either published over and replaced or updated depending on the kind of editorial priorities I was describing. But I think ideally it would be flexible. I think that's a creator's choice, and that kind of empowerment, just like we've taken a kind of an interoperable approach to creator's choice for existing hosting solutions too. We've got a program we call Works With, where we're allowing folks, if they have an existing hosting provider, they can push to that provider and use ad integration or analytics or other aspects of that they like, and then Spooler just becomes part of their assembly or publishing workflow as a mid-step. And that's a nice kind of plug and play approach to folks that already have shows that are existing that want to take advantage of this different UI, but don't want to move off from their relationship they have with their hosting provider now.
Do you see this playing well with the smart speaker platforms better than kind of a traditional podcast catcher type environment?
I think that's a great use case. We want to be able to deliver this capability for real time news effectively. So yes, we definitely had smart speakers in mind, and informed in some part by my experience working on HomePod and helping that team with news providers and Hey S Play the News, that whole experience. And so yes, I think ideally, and we're set up for, of course, with RSS distribution, the podcast catalogs that are available through various channels to smart speakers, and then that's kind of our idea with the JSON parallel publishing as well for app integrations, and we actually have our first app integration client frequency machine, who's working on a cool city guide app experience that will roll out later in the month. And they like the setup of the, being able to publish to RSS for podcasts and then into their app for audio control with the JSON. So we think that's a nice way to maybe, do things like skills for smart speakers in the future.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I've been thinking about for the last couple of years that we're going to see podcasts in general, or some podcasts anyway, migrate into other apps more as an additional content layer to be added to all sorts of different genre apps out there. And I was thinking that, your platform would be a perfect kind of companion for making that happen. A lot of the apps are looking for, I'm sure, fairly short, highly relevant content. Probably less looking for, long content or content that's a little bit more generic. So I was just curious, are you seeing movement like that? Are you seeing people with content apps today that maybe just have written and video in them that are looking to add, audio like this from a platform like yours?
Well, it's still pretty early days for us in terms of sales cycles, but yeah, we're talking to a variety of folks. I think the furthest along is the Frequency Machine team, as we mentioned with that Epic Grenade. But that's exactly what we were thinking, trying to offer a single point for the best of both of those experiences. Obviously, we want, as I was saying, kind of wanted to be good citizens of RSS 2.0 and keep working with all these platforms that we know and use every day ourselves. But then also for the creators that wanted a more centralized experience and maybe already had a web property with significant traffic like the team at Insider, what unique and new capability could we bring to a back end that they could plug in and have it feel very much a part of the UI, the UX of their existing web presence, whether that's an app or a website. So the skinnable nature of the Spooler player is kind of that same idea where we're using Insider fonts, and the playhead is Insider Blue, and it should look like the other media players elsewhere on the site that have kind of UI precedent rather than a plugin that looks like a Spooler property. That's the idea anyway.
Right.
But it can also deliver the skippability of segments. If you don't want to listen to the whole show, you can go right to what you're most interested in.
One of the things I was talking with Andy about was, I think you've definitely developed a platform that has a unique user persona use case, and it would be, as you said, sites that would maybe like The Verge or Engadget, these high traffic websites that are trying to do updates during the day and have a big enough team to be able to manage something where they're dropping new segments in
content,
that are they're hitting that 3, 4, 5 times a day, whatever it may be, so that there's a fresh experience. And I was kind of frank with Andy. I said, did you guys pigeonhole yourself too tight to a limited group, or do you think that there is enough of those available to make the revenue to grow the platform and survive?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. It was a decision that we wanted to execute really well with this, admittedly, to your point, a very specific use case of this high tempo content, because it's also a big production lift to be able to pull off that kind of very different than long form like we're doing now, where it's concentrated, it's specific, it's sort of high information density in a short format. And so, yes, we were intentional about trying to execute around that idea, and then trying to be good listeners of our existing and near-term clients about how could we add capability and make sure that this is a tool that could be used for other use cases. And I think with my in my experience putting any creator tools out there, you end up getting a lot of unintended use cases that are always delightful. And I think one of the key joys of my career is empowering creative folks with new tools and access to distribution and simplifying complex tasks that can be repetitive with efficiencies. And that's where I really enjoy building tools in that space. And so we, had this initial specific use case in mind, and then are enjoying seeing how it's immediately being diverted into different use cases by creative folks, which I love. It's awesome. And then it's a discipline exercise, of course, of you have different cohorts of people that want to take it in these different directions, and how do you kind of establish the through line in terms of product roadmap, which is a fun exercise.
And I think about my own tech show. It's like twice a week, and the content's burned in 48 hours because it's old news.
Right.
And yet there's that static file. I only have enough cycles to do 2 shows a week. But maybe if I had a little more time and I wasn't running a podcast company, maybe I'd have enough time to maybe do 3, 4, 5 updates during the week prior to the next full episode. So I could see a use case there. And with the ability to have, because my site gets a huge amount of web traffic. So even for my little site that, gets 20,000 hits a day or whatever it is, it's still, if there was a player there with updated content, it might be compelling. But then again, it's a big lift. It's like, okay, you get up in the morning and you got to do, an hour's worth of production or whatever to get 3, 4 spots in, and then rebuild this thing and hit publish. That's a lift.
Well, and where we're coming in is how simple can we make that lift so that all of your energy can be devoted to your content generation and doing great writing, great reporting, and not have to worry too much about the assembly step and the publication step. And our thesis is that with great, a fresh take on some workflow software to get you there, it can be efficient enough to do it and easier than it might have been previously.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. If I was part of a news organization, some group, this would be the tool, for me, because it does everything that you basically get almost like broadcast capability on an audio scale that's not been possible up to this point without putting out 3, 4, 5 new episodes every day. So it's an interesting play. It sure is.
That's why getting somebody on your team like Andy was a perfect fit coming out of NPR. So I think.
Absolutely. Well, and
mindset.
I think you can credit Andy with. Oh, I'm sorry. Go, Rob. Go ahead.
No, it follows along with, I'm sure, how he did things in the past with his prior projects prior to podcasting. It's just, and to kind of also fall off of what Todd just said is that, though podcasting has been consumed pretty much completely within the first, 48 hours, Todd?
Yeah.
Is when
80,
most people consume. Yeah.
80% of podcasts deliver 90% of their lifetime downloads in the first 96 hours.
Right.
So I'm sure you had insights to that over at Apple too, and there's shows that have long tail, and those shows are like, if you have real long tail, that's just hook a money printing press to that thing because, you've got, you've hit the golden lottery ticket. But yeah.
Well, even great episodes that are like listen to Questlove Supreme and the rebroadcast, how they pull from the archive and it's sort of like a greatest hits or a, best of on a TV show. And there's still so much, or at least listener value and joy for me going back to even an interview from, 2017 or 18 or something. So it's interesting to think about, is there value that we as an industry are leaving on the table in that archive?
Well, there is if you have that true long tail. But again, a lot of podcasters say they have long tail, and I just wink at them. It's because
That's all about. How big is that long tail?
I see the hockey stick laid up there. I see the and it's like, okay, you got long tail. You got 10, 15 downloads 2 months later.
Very thin tail. Yes.
Very thin.
So given that, do you guys focus on trying to get any updates to an existing episode done within a certain number of hours, or is there no entire limit on that?
There's no technical limit. I think that, again, that's an editorial decision with the tools, as is kind of the day part, because because of the production requirement for what we set up. I should say what Andy set up for the refresh. They're starting at 7 a.m. Eastern and going through 1 p.m. Eastern. And during that time, I think he just said that they do something like 20 or 25 segments, really dictated by the news cycle. So was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It was like a really big day for updating, and it was like the perfect use case, Newsday,
Right,
News
right,
Cycle,
right,
or
right.
Spooler, where every few minutes there was a new Supreme Court story update. And that's where the versioning system really can be helpful, where you're not having to recreate all the metadata and sort of that's your asset for that story. And we're trying to make it sort of live beyond a single use to be a version 5, 6, 7, 8 as new details emerge, and you can update just that section. So we see that as part of the capability that we were certainly excited to bring forth.
And it would be also interesting because you could stack it. You don't necessarily have to take the old stuff out. You can continue adding and building to the story. The segment would get longer, but it would be like, what do you do on a blog post? You do an update on the bottom of the page. It's the same type of thing. You do an update to the episode, which in that situation is pretty cool.
But
yeah.
I just wonder about expectations with the audience too. How do you, it almost feels like this might be on the verge of creating a new medium of sorts, because what you're doing is you're creating, I would hope, if it's being marketed correctly for what you're actually delivering, is it's setting different expectations with the audience, right? That this feed is basically live. It's basically being constantly updated. So if you listen to it, half an hour ago, when you go in and listen to it, half an hour later, it could be different content, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you set that expectation in a medium that's been pretty much locked into a download, store, and playback perception?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's a key marketing challenge as well. And the way that we've approached it and the Refresh team specifically has approached it with the first show is just reinforcing that message about the sort of uptime of the show and the refresh cycle and how you can come back and listen to fresh stories. And it's I think it's a unique differentiator, but it's also not a perfectly easy story to tell.
No, it's not.
So I think that's a little bit of a slow build over time as people can recognize that the show is responding to the news cycle intraday, which is a new capability that we think it's really cool. And hopefully there's an audience building around that. But it's a great observation. It's not a completely obvious statement from the jump. And I don't know if it's a new medium. It's flattering to think about it as a new medium, but it's from our perspective, it's sort of pressing with some new tech on one weak point that we all recognized about podcasting, the space that we love so much. And could we solve it and give creators a new kind of a new tool in the toolbox to reach an audience with fresh content? And it's exciting to try to figure out for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think too,
and you're going back to your comment about Andy and the idea. The idea was for sure Andy's thinking about this for several years, and within the framework of dynamic targeting of ad content. Is there an application for that in the segmented approach of that to primary content? So bringing that idea over to the actual meat of and bones of the show itself, rather than just the commercial messaging, which is kind of what we're starting to pay off with the platform now, and that dovetailed nicely with Henry's idea about a always fresh news experience from the same kind of journalistic quality that Insider brings to the table on the print side. What's the equivalent when he's when someone is out walking or exercising or doing something where they can't be reading even on the mobile app or the website?
Do you think it's going to drive shorter? Because if you think about it, if you want to build an audience that's going to refresh and repeat throughout the day, it's almost like that top of the hour news. It hits on, traditional radio, and it's usually the segments are the same. Maybe they've added something to it. Right. But those are very short. Those are 2-3 minutes max. So that, and I think what's cool about this too is, Rob, they can put an ad in that bad boy every time. So, it's like you monetize
it's
that.
A short ad though. It's got to be like a brought to you by kind of thing.
Yeah, but you can still that's some rinse and repeat that I get excited about from a dollars and cents wise if you get the right sponsor in there. But again, going back, do you think it's going to drive real short segments?
That's interesting. I love the idea of aggregating the short segments into a longer experience, because I find, I mean, I guess we all love long form. That's why we're in podcasts, right? A the other model that we have for Spooler that we haven't piloted yet, but is the news break as a unit inserted to an existing show, where you can solve that problem you were describing a second ago, Todd, where if you had a longer format interview program with a headline package in it that you wanted to keep fresh, because the interview was evergreen, but the headline package, and we know some big, very popular news programs that do analysis with a headline package, and then it's like, well, the headlines are stale an hour after it's out the door, because that's the definition of, kind of headlines and updates.
Right.
So Spooler could power that assembly by refreshing that specific package, even without touching the rest of the long form show format. And we think that's a pretty interesting use case for Spooler down the road, to be able to kind of be a final assembly step, maybe after that content was just before it goes out for listening. And we think that could be a potentially way, but I don't know if it'll drive short necessarily. Certainly I, as a listener, like the 10-minute news package format. As there's a lot to be said about social sharing of shorter audio clips.
True.
And we're very excited to think about segment sharing. The story sharing, so you can take the interview with your Ukrainian newlyweds in the refresh, and I could send it to Todd because I thought he might be interested in it, as an extract and an invitation to then listen to the full experience in the rest of the show. And with the segments, of course, you can get into interesting things about, could you play the rest of the show automatically after that was your entry point, and things that we're thinking about for ideal experiences. But I guess I don't anticipate that it'll drive short, because by definition it's inviting you to stack it up and stack short segments into a longer piece.
That's interesting, to take someone and send them a segment. Think about that for a second, Rob. You send them a segment. As soon as the segment's over, you kick them into the beginning of the actual episode.
Right.
It's
kind of a teaser into longer form content.
It's cool. Does it scale? Do you get enough usage out of it by the listeners to really drive engagement, or is it just going to be more used? Someone put something on Twitter or Facebook, or
yeah, which has value unto itself. I think that we still don't have, as an industry, our ultimate viral audio playback.
Right.
I mean, audiograms are fantastic, and they're they got the visual aspect of it, but I don't think we've had yet the scaling solution for that to make it easy to share.
Yeah, because now it's just like you Headliner or one of these other tools, and it's usually the host doing, and it's not the listener. And I know from our experience, we've made the embed available on our website players for years, but we track how much those are grabbed and dropped somewhere, and it's not that much, because it's a task. Whereas a tweet, be honest with you, if Twitter had something, hey, Elon, if Twitter had the ability for me to send a segment of audio to it easily, now that would be a good
There's
feature.
A partnership for James. No, just kidding.
He's a listener of this show, right?
Well,
the new,
you never
the new owner of Twitter.
You never know who's listening. So we have found that out over the years.
Okay.
Well,
I feel like he's pretty switched on. So
Twitter started out as a podcasting platform, but
Odeo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
Odeo. Yep. And I just want to mention that you're I was thinking about streaming online radio too. I was like, how different is what you're doing to streaming online radio as opposed to podcasting? It feels like you're kind of like almost like shoehorning right in between them.
Right. Yes.
And I just wonder if this technology is taken to its natural extension, that somehow, you guys be the ones that really do the most damage to radio.
Hey, good.
Well, I think it's a good observation because there are some strong parallels for sure, and there's some great legacy radio production suites that have a very, kind of the playlist metaphor is not a new one. This is our kind of fresh take on it, and podcast first, I guess you could say. But for sure, some of the most interesting conversations we've had with potential clients have been the bigger radio outfits, because they've already solved that problem of making a lot of stuff to put into it.
Right.
So this
Short
is a
stuff,
great efficiency
typically.
tool.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. The story format is very well known to them, and they're already in some cases doing it.
But-
So we were, yeah.
But the
Sorry.
big difference is if you're listening to radio, it's linear stream. It's you join in the middle.
Right.
You're not joining at the beginning.
Right.
So-
and that's that hybrid aspect
Right.
of this. Right, Todd?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we want to position ourselves as, we in our pitch, we talk about being the best of both of those, and enabling both those creator bases too, right? We want to help people that are still primarily radio production, live focused, come to on demand and get the most value that they can out of that existing production workflow. Hence our strategy for interoperability, where you can do bulk upload into Spooler, and you can output to other hosts if you want to. But then also from the kind of podcast author community, where the creators there may be coming from long form and want more efficiency with rapid updates. And the thesis of the company basically is that there's opportunity space between those worlds that we could get kind of a little bit of the best of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really see it, and it's one of those things where if you really set your mind to it and think about it, you're like, there's some possibilities here, but again, you got to have a team and some resources to make that happen. But I
know what it is, Todd. It's live on-demand radio. No,
well, here's a case.
In some ways, that's kind of what's being replicated here. Is kind of like a little bit of both.
Well, I tell you what doesn't work.
Right.
I've got my tech show in the last 3 episodes in a loop. It's streaming on a shoutcast. It's just it's and people join in the middle. And believe it or not, it gets quite a bit of usage. But the biggest complaint I get from it is I joined your show in the middle. I had no idea what you were talking about.
You're talking about, right.
Right, because they got in 3/4 of the way through something. Of course, we switched topics, but they're like,
Well,
then
they have to start from the beginning
right.
and replay.
Well, and they can't if it's streamed because it's linear. So that's, that's where they come back and listen to the podcast. Oh, okay, now I got the context.
Well, on Facebook and YouTube, you can pull it back on a live stream, right? So,
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if you've ever done that, but
no, I guess you can when we're live, but that's not available if you're using Live 365 or something like that. You can't pull it back.
Not all platforms.
What's your the two of you? What's your perspective on audio in the metaverse? Speaking of Facebook, they've just shut down the podcast service. I think that's coming in June, right? So they're not doing podcasts.
Are my NDAs still in place?
I think it's probably over with by now, Todd. But,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they really ever got podcasting entirely off the ground. So if you want my honest feedback,
you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And there was lots of advice given by multiple parties, and it was largely ignored. So they had their agenda. Number one, it should have been available on the desktop. That's number one. It should have been easily found in your news feed on the desktop. If they had done that alone, the whole picture would have changed. Instead,
what about they are focused on metaverse? So what's your perspective on what's the audio on demand experience, if any, just in the metaverse? Like, I know that they could have done podcasting differently, but what about what they are seemingly focused on, which is bringing this amazing new environment to life to more people? Do you think there's a space for podcasts there? And if so, what do you see?
Well, I don't know about the metaverse. I think if they truly are putting together a virtual reality, right? If podcasting is a big part of reality, then there needs to be some sort of a avenue to participate in podcasting through that. Right?
Every time I hear the metaverse and Facebook, I think about Second Life. So, that's,
Right.
to me, it's like, okay, how's the metaverse going to look like? How are we going to interact with it? I don't see many of us wearing, whatever those,
Oculus.
Yeah, I don't see us wearing those. The geeks will, but
Yeah.
I don't know. He's got a vision, but
So you're skeptical, it sounds like.
a little bit.
Okay.
Because
Yeah. I think it's an interesting question.
people consume Facebook here and on their desktop, and people are already suspicious of Facebook in many ways about what's being presented to them. So I don't know. It's
Though I think it is a generational question, and James, I do think if you think about, I spent many years on the Xbox team, and so they were clearly involved in that kind of virtual reality experience stuff very early in the process, and a lot of people get really enthralled in those worlds. It's almost like an escape. It's a different world. I think a lot of us think about it in that way, and we don't really want to live our lives like that. But then you throw into the mix augmented reality as a layer on top of virtual reality, and I believe that's really the first evolution of this that we're going to see is technology overlaid on reality. And I do believe that there's probably something coming from Apple in this way, and coming from Google, and coming from other players that are trying to figure out a way to incorporate this stuff into our lives more and more. So I have a hard time thinking that podcasting isn't going to have a place. But it's just, how long is it going to take before we get there? I don't know.
To be fair, the wearable experiment that Apple did, it was interesting. I still have my glass somewhere. That's not.
Wait. You mean Google? Google Glass.
Oh, Google Glass. Yes.
Google,
Sorry.
right.
Duh.
Yes. Right. Sorry. Okay.
All right. Yep. I have a senior moment. So that
So it's totally fine. Don't worry.
So that was way ahead of its time, but it was just weird walking around, and I don't think people are going to wear a wearable in public. So if the metaverse includes wearing something that is going to show me something, I don't know.
Todd, is that
interesting.
A perception that was built on what Robert Scoble did in the shower?
Well, okay. Most people don't know what you're talking about, so be careful.
I
here.
remember that. I saw that still image on Twitter. I think I was like, "Whoa, Robert Scoble, there you are."
Yeah, but it was because of the perceived privacy invasion people felt by seeing that.
The camera right here at all times.
Right. I don't know. Or is this going to be, like you said? Is it it's like some future space science thing where everyone's got a headset on their head and they're sitting in a lazy boy? God help us if that's the case.
It seems like Snap has done some interesting work when it comes to hardware and bringing a kind of fashion forward approach to the industrial design of how do you gently, if the Google Glass was the hard entry into AR, Snap, I think it's pretty cool the way that they've done it. They don't talk about it as AR. I think it's a cool set of glasses that will layer on visuals and allow you to record and things. So it seems like an intriguing, maybe more consumer friendly entry point.
I bought my first Snap glasses outside of the big Ferris wheel in Las Vegas. They had a kiosk there, and you could buy those glasses right there with a little kiosk, and I bought them. Stupidest purchase I ever made. They're still in the wrapper. I don't know. It's you're probably right, but I don't know. Here's the thing about where we are, where podcasting is. Podcasts can be the best thing is they can be consumed anywhere. You don't have these restrictions of being in the metaverse or you listen to Jim driving to work, wherever it may be. So I don't think it's going to affect the podcasting space per se. And I don't know. Facebook has got their own agenda, but they definitely blew it with podcasting. And I lost $1. Had a bet.
Todd,
Oh, what was the bet?
I had a bet with Mike Dell that Facebook would achieve 1% listenership within the first 12 months.
they didn't get
okay.
there. They didn't get there.
No.
So, Todd, how exactly do you know for sure that we're not already living in the metaverse?
Well, red, blue, pill. Who knows?
Oh, is it a simulation?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think we're about, yeah. I won't go there because people think I'm a whack job. I think there's a 50-50 chance we're living in a simulation, but that's just me. I'm a geek. Whoever's in control of me dumps some money in my bank.
Yeah, I think it is if it is, it's purely in a virtual reality world. It's not an augmented reality world. So, yeah. So, James, what's your thought? What do you think is happening? And I know, I don't, coming from Apple, I don't know if there's anything that you knew special about Apple's plans, but just kind of your own personal observation on what you think is happening with those technologies. Do you think they're going to hit any kind of adoption and mainstream?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it's a great moment for it if we do end up having a consumer hardware moment where we can folks that make hardware can overcome some of the maybe missteps or challenges that glass had with the kind of awkward appearance and the immediate kind of, at least when I used it, it was a very immediate social isolation.
Yeah.
Where it was trying to be a hybrid experience of, giving you extra info just for you, but then you're expected to be in the social context at the same time was tough to be present, I guess, is what I found. But I think there's so much potential. I'm actually very interested in that space. It seems like great for learning potential, information, communication, maybe even if we haven't figured out how do you have an AR experience socially, if that part has to come later, that's fine. I think there seems to be so much potential. And I'm kind of bullish on this space from an audio perspective. If we do have a consumer moment for AR that lands and the content will be such a key part of making that enjoyable and successful is what exactly is the media experience inside your AR. So I'm excited and bullish about it. I think it will be great potentially for audio.
Back in the early days with Second Life, I don't know, James, if you ever got involved in it. We did do podcasting inside a Second Life before, but it was typically done. It was typically done more as almost like a live stream experience, is what it was back then.
You could also you could also tie an RSS feed to a property, so as people walked into a property, the podcast would start. So
that's cool.
Yeah, but
like that.
Again, it was you had to be pretty nerdy.
That's pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
And then you have like the album art on the walls, on the virtual walls and stuff like that. Yeah. Right.
Second Life still exists.
I just wanted to say thanks so much for having me on. I apologize that I have to drop off, but I was very happy to receive the invitation and was really fun chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And why don't you give everyone a plug, and if there's a way they can reach out to you, if you're willing to share that, please do.
Oh, yeah, please. You can check out Spooler at spooler.fm, and the first show from Insider is available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and as well as insider.com/therefresh. And feel free to reach out to me or the team about interest in talking about our technology. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate having you.
Yeah. Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
Take care.
Thanks, James. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Did we scare him off?
No, he had a hard stop at 4.
Okay, so yeah, we get a little deep there on the metaverse thing. I don't know. It's just, but there's a lot of stuff that's been happening, Rob.
Yeah, there certainly has.
And by the way, how you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay.
All right.
Getting better all the time.
Good.
Yep.
So I tell you, coming off NAB, and for those of you that didn't watch the 2 live events, we've got some really, really positive feedback from that. So they're available. I'll link to them today if we don't get them up as an episode right away and on the YouTube side, so you can watch them. But we got some good feedback, and our guests have got some good feedback too. So there was some good dialogue.
That's even
there.
prior to them being available in the RSS feeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if you want to get a piece of what we did, drop in there and listen, and we'll get it in the RSS feed as soon as I find some extra cycles. But I think that the Tom Webster thing has got me really curious.
Yeah, it's a little sad to see Tom go. So it depends on what he's off to next. Curious.
Yeah,
we're definitely both curious about what he might do next. But yeah, it's definitely an end of an era. I'm curious who's going to come in behind him and fill in for what he did at Edison. That leaves a big hole in Edison research right there. And we did have his boss on at NAB. So if you want to go hear a little bit, I mean, obviously no discussion about this topic with Larry, but
he had to have known when we did that was coming. So Larry,
I did invite Tom to be on with us at NAB too, because oftentimes Tom is at NAB, so
right?
That's why. So I guess
so. But the invitation's open, Tom. Whenever you are ready to show your cards, what's next? Because he's definitely staying in the podcasting space. He's made it pretty clear in his post that he was. So,
and who knows? He might be wanting to be independent.
Well, maybe.
So we shall see.
If you're looking for a job, Tom, send me your resume too. I'd love to see it.
There you go.
It's and there's just I know I've been pretty much head down since I got back trying to get caught up, but I actually fly out to Outlier in Austin. I'm speaking tomorrow night, doing the opening keynote there, and I'm going to be doing 30 minutes on the state of podcasting. So, given my rendition of where I think the space is at and what people should be thinking about and doing, so I look forward to doing that. And then back here, and then another turnaround and out to Orlando for one of 2 trips to Orlando. But we will be able to do a show next Wednesday. I will be here.
Yeah, we're going to be here, and then also we're doing a live show on the 27th of May in Orlando as well at Podfest. So, which I need to book a couple of guests, or if you know of a couple of folks, Todd, that you want to invite to join us there.
Yeah. If you're going to be at Podfest and you think you want to be on, let us know you're going to be there too. We'd like to have a good mix of ladies and gentlemen that would join us. So
great noon on the 27th.
Noon on the 27th. So let us know. We definitely want to hear and have a good diverse panel, if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's
going to be live streamed too, I believe.
Well, that's awesome as well.
Yeah.
I was actually watching a little bit of the news on what's been happening in the podcasting space, and it's not a lot of major announcements per se. Just a lot of I think it's we're heading towards summer, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, and it just seems like the news cycle maybe has slowed down just a little bit.
Yeah, and I just had the first Board of Governors meeting with the Podcast Academy today with all the new board members.
Oh, so how did that go?
That went very well, actually. Everybody was there, and everybody was in good spirits and wanting to very positive, and we already started talking about the ambies for next year. So it's all bubbling up really fast. So yeah.
So it's interesting. Chartable put out a statement today because
Yep.
they're probably worried about people abandoning ship. And by the way, all of you that have started bringing your stats over to Blueberry, we love you. We've had a huge uptick. Little pitch there, but it looks to me like they're pulling back a little bit on them saying they're going away completely, and it will only be available in megaphones. So it seems like they're going to still allow people to use their tools.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And did you see the head of Anchor Podcasts has decided to leave?
Well, his 2 years are up.
Yep.
So he's done his 2 years of staying around, and he's off.
Mr. Michael Magnano.
Yeah.
And so who knows where he's going next?
Yep. Hey, I just can't help but because we all get our time in the bucket, so it'll probably my turn in the bucket next. But Anchor was down yesterday from 8:45 a.m. to 5:15 Eastern, not delivering any media, nothing. They were.
Wow.
That's an outage.
Down, out, and
I don't understand how you can. I can understand your platform being down, but how can you not have your media being delivered during that same time? Someone screwed up big time. Did something
because it's usually, I guess, with their platform, everything is on the same thing. I guess everything is the same thing.
Well, okay, but usually your media is being served by a CDN.
Right, separately.
And that's usually separated from the hardware. So
maybe it's not on their platform, Todd.
Oh, well, I can't even imagine having been on the reception end of that support being down for 9 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have for our redirect service alone, I have a company goal being at 99.9999.
Right.
And that allows you to be down, I don't know, there's a Google thing, how many seconds you can be down a year. Well, let me actually see what that means. And we've had a few outages ourselves over the years, but what is 99.999 relay uptime mean? I think I'll get Google will tell me. Let's see here. I found this before, but for 99.9999, you can only be down 31.6 seconds a year.
Wow.
So that's my goal, and if I have my redirect server goes down within about 7 to 10 seconds, the one that's sitting there idling comes up at full speed and takes over in failover mode. And then there's another one in another data center. If that second one fails, the third one picks up. So, but to be down 9 hours, that's only 99% efficiency. So they've already, if they have any service level agreements with anybody, they've destroyed them in their this outage.
Right. Hey, Todd, did you see that Riverside FM is now? Well, they actually dropped the FM part.
Yeah.
So now it's just Riverside, but it's their platform is now available on the iPad.
Yeah, that's good news.
That is good news for all those podcasters out there that like to create their podcasts on iPads. Yeah.
So it gives you a greater flexibility in using their platform. You don't have to necessarily be on a desktop with a browser.
Right. It makes content production for that platform mobile. So, which is a fantastic evolution.
But you still have to have a good connection.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you still have to have a good connection. By the way.
Yeah, but it's going to have to be wireless.
Yeah. By the way, my Starlink antenna came.
Oh, it did.
It's installed, and
you're happy with the performance?
So far, so good. I've escaped broadband hell from rural America. It's nice to actually click on a video and it not watch the thing spin for 2 minutes before it starts. So
Pretty cool.
the speeds have been as high as like 150, as low as like 60 or 70, with an average of about 10 to 15 up. And 30 some microsecond delay has been pretty average, but we'll see if it improves over time. I know my area was just turned on, so probably they've got the minimum number of satellites in my zone to serve me, and my sister got one too, and they're loving it. So we have 2 Starlink antennas within 100 feet of each other. So I'm very, very pleased so far.
Yep.
Might even be able to do this show from the loft, which would be kind of cool.
I know that's what you, I think, mentioned last time.
Yeah,
you were hopeful that could be the case.
So we'll see.
But just to reiterate this point, June 3rd is the final day for having your podcast available on your page on Facebook.
Yeah, what a cluster!
So
Unbelievable.
It's gonna get removed by Facebook. So don't be surprised if you log in that day and your podcast is no longer on your pages page. So
I do find it actually a little surprising that they have reversed course, but it's been crickets from that team for a long time.
I'm not necessarily 100% disappointed. So just put it to you that way.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, will YouTube lose interest?
I think there's less likelihood of losing interest over there.
But the problem is Google,
there's just so much usage right now already. So
in my perspective, though, Google has got a little bit of a communications issue too, because it's like their team fell off the map.
Well, and we have to be honest here too. If we are heading into a recession,
we're not in one already.
Well, I don't think we're officially in one yet, but I think all the indications are starting to point that way. I believe we've had one quarter already that was negative GDP or something like that. So I think we have to have 2 of them, don't we?
I don't know what the rules are. I'm not an economist. Yeah. But remember, podcasting thrived during the last recession.
I'm not saying podcasting is going to fall apart. I'm saying from a big corporate interest standpoint, economic changes do cause the companies to change economic priorities. Let me just put it to you that way.
Well, if you look at Netflix, they're canceling a bunch of stuff because they're losing subscribers. So what are people doing? They're tightening their belt because
they're pulling back on spending.
Right, because you go to the grocery store and you have to give up your firstborn to be able to afford to buy a bag of a loaf of bread.
Right. Yeah, and that also is going to have an impact here. I know this isn't an economics program, but there's a lot of talk about food prices going way up because of food shortages coming, and so start growing your own food.
Well, thus the open nature of podcasting, though, being a largely free medium.
Right.
The last thing people are going to give up is their cell phones. Their cell phones will be one of the last things they give up. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, there's some on the economic scale that have lost their cell phones already because they just can't. They've already had to give them up, which is sad.
And if podcasting is one of the most trusted mediums as a source of information, then people are probably less likely to give up their podcast too. So, but I guess the bigger question is there going to be pullback of the pool of advertisers in the podcasting market, and all these estimates and forecasts about podcasting hitting 2 billion in ad sales by next year may get delayed again.
Well, I don't know. Again, last time there was a recession, podcast advertising spending went up.
Well, it did, but it didn't go up as fast.
Oh.
I think it did not go up as fast.
Yeah, I think we're safe.
Yeah, I think overall, I agree with you. I think the podcasting medium is overall safe, but I do think that there could be some advertisers that pull back on their marketing budgets, is what I'm saying. So, and that could include podcasting with some of them. I'm not saying it'll happen with all of them. I'm just saying some of them may. This is a tried and true pattern that I've seen. I spent many years in the marketing industry myself. And it's what I've seen during recessions is pullback in advertising spend.
Right.
Obviously there's prioritization that goes on there too. If podcasting have proven themselves to be driving the highest return on investment, they may not pull back on podcast advertising as much, as long as the numbers are there, because that may be the most efficient way for them to continue any kind of marketing spend. That's where podcasting really, at the end of the day, Todd, the things we've been talking about for a long time around ROI, is what keeps podcast advertising humming.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, here's the challenge too. If you've got a premium show and you're charging for that premium show, I was looking at my own budget. I was looking, because I'm in the boat with the rest of you. And I started looking at said, well, that I can get rid of that and get rid of that. Next thing I know, I've slashed about $100 off my monthly, I would call that, just a little subscription stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I canceled YouTube TV, canceled 2 or 3 other things that I'm just not using. So, if I'm doing that,
right,
a lot of other people are.
How many hundreds of millions of others are doing the same?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. And you can still get some television if you have the right type of antenna. So it's not like you have to go without local TV mostly, but you have to invest in the right kind of antenna to pick up that signal. So
right. Yeah, that's true. So I guess John Spurlock, I guess, had some data showing that Spotify's free podcast hosting they have, I guess, made available 25.8% of all podcasts episodes in April. I don't know, Todd, does that ring true with you?
I'm not surprised. I haven't pulled the numbers ourselves, but I wouldn't be surprised. It was 25%. But yet 25% of the podcasting space was off for 9 hours yesterday. So,
Yeah, I guess that could make up for it right there.
Well, it'll knock 1% down for next month.
Right.
Potentially.
Right. That's true.
But if you're going to run a service, we all have our time in the bucket.
Yeah, we do.
You just knock on wood. It's not your turn,
Right. So Todd, as you think about the 2 episodes that we did at the NAB, each one of those were 90-minute episodes.
Yeah.
How are you thinking that you might push those out once you get them? I mean, I could go in and record the audio for both of them if you want.
If you would do that, that would be great. And then Dropbox them to me, and I'll put them up in just drop in the feed, and that way folks can get them.
Okay. And I mean, how do you think that you're going to publish those? You're going to put out maybe a couple in 1 week?
Yeah, we'll just spread them out by 2 or 3 days and put them out.
So put this one out as soon as possible, and then those are bonus episodes next week.
They'll follow.
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
So get ready for a whole bunch of content, everybody. And of course, do you really want to listen to us for 4.5 hours? I don't know. That's the question.
Chew on them as you can.
But there were some great conversations there, and the second session we had, I was I in the hallway. I thought, oh, this one's going to be lively, you know.
Mhm.
But I was pretty impressed with a certain young lady. She was very, very impressive. I think that she's got her and I think a lot alike.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Now you know why I asked her to join,
Yeah,
because
it,
I've seen her speak a couple
yeah. I
times.
didn't know because I didn't get much time to feel her out at the
Yeah,
and then when the conversation was, I was like, oh yeah, or, bonus. So quite the firecracker. I was very impressed.
yeah. So you'll have to listen into that episode to check her out.
I'm being elusive here and trying to get
Yes.
all of you to want to listen.
Yeah, and then Larry Rosen
Yeah, Larry was
uh,
great too.
was also on that episode. So talking about podcast advertising, a lot of complex topics and subjects that we talked about in that episode about podcast advertising. It's a fascinating area in the medium right now that's evolving and changing, and there's a lot of directions that it could ultimately go. No question.
Well, we'll see over time. That's for sure. Um, I don't really have a lot more to talk about today. How about you?
Yeah, I think we can probably wrap it up. I think we've created enough content in the last
Yeah.
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
To be frank with you, Rob, I'm, that night we should disclose you didn't completely hang with us, but Tuesday
No,
night we the little group that was in our little area. How should we say? We ended up on Fremont Street.
right.
And at 1 o'clock in the morning, someone made the bold suggestion that we do shots of Patron. Oh, worst. I was like, well, I'll do one.
Right.
And then three total later, I'm like, we need to go. And I think I ended up in bed at 2:30 on that night.
Wow.
And so did not know if my cohort would make it, but Mackenzie showed up on time to get in the Uber, and we ended up over at the convention center. And thank God it was a little bit of a slower day. I think both of us, I think that whole section, at least those that were partying with us, were a little rough around the edges.
Yes. The podcast pavilion on the floor was a little rough that morning.
Yes, it was a little rough, and the carpet actually looked to be very tempting, but I did not acquiesce and lay down. I was actually pretty good. I drank
Yeah.
2 bottles of water when I got back to the room, and I think I got 4 hours sleep,
Oh, that's good.
maybe 3.5.
That's good.
You and your daughter punched out a little earlier, and you're probably
Yeah.
lucky that you did.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem was we really didn't eat. We kind of snacked at that podcast movement event, and we really didn't have. You guys went and ate. You were the smart ones that went and found food.
Yeah.
The rest of us went and found liquor, and that just Oh my
Well,
God.
I didn't drink any alcohol.
I know
so that's why I
you don't drink, so you were good to go. But
Yeah. Try to do that. There's been too many events that I've gone to when I have, and hasn't been a pleasant morning.
well, yeah, I actually wasn't too rough, but I definitely slept early that next night.
Yeah. Right.
So you have to do that about once every 2 or 3 years to realize that you are mortal,
Yeah.
and that
True.
that is probably not an advisable thing to do at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. That's true. So we can do next Wednesday.
Yep.
Okay. And then I fly out for my first event on
Yeah,
the 13th.
the following Wednesday I will not be available. So maybe I'll save one of these NAB interviews for that week. Maybe I'll do that.
For the 18th?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm going to actually be out of the pocket on the 25th too.
So let's see here. The 11th is good. This is May. So, so you leave for 14 for Spain or someplace, right?
Sweden.
For Sweden. And so you'll be out on the 18th, and then we'll be at Podfest on the 25th. So,
But I'm also going to be out of the pocket on the 25th too.
yeah, but I'll be in Orlando, and we're going to do our live show on the 27th. So
yeah, right.
yeah, we got enough content to fill, so people won't feel too lonely.
Okay.
And
So you want to save one of those episodes for the 18th? Then?
Yeah,
Is that what you're thinking?
maybe I'll do that.
Okay.
If you guys want to watch it, just go over to, I have the link up in the YouTube channel in the show notes today. So you can
it's
go
all it's all on demand. I think the first episode that we did is only available on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I think that's right.
Right.
Yep, because we didn't know we were going live until 10 minutes before, and I was scrambling.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So how do we want to handle that?
Well,
do we want to?
You'll have to capture it off Facebook then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay, doke.
I'll try and grab both of them.
All right, sounds good. Now that we've bored you guys with our administrative meeting here and talking about drinking too much at NAB.
Right.
And we have actually, we probably should talk at some point about NAB, but some things have to change there.
Yeah. Well, it was only half the size that it normally is.
And we were out in the South 40, the West Hall,
It's a beautiful new conference hall.
But out in the middle of nowhere. It's like a second conference. And we were stuck around radio transmitters and towers.
It's a long way to walk to get there from the main convention center.
Yeah.
It may not seem like it when you look at it, but it does because of how it's oriented. It takes a long time to get over there.
Yeah. Stupidest entrance ever. If they had the entrance as you come across Paradise, it'd be much better. But enough people complain they'll make that an entrance, but I doubt it.
Yeah, that'd be a big retrofit.
Oh yeah, but they got lots of money. They'll be able. They can do it.
Right.
All right, everyone. I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter.
I'm Rob Greenlee, and I'm on Twitter as well, at robgreenlee.com. And you can send me an email if you want, robg@libsyn.com. It would be great to hear from you and get your feedback on any topics you would like us to cover. And we'll do what we can to keep you updated with what's going on. So it'll be interesting on the 11th. I'm not sure we have any special guests booked.
No.
I don't think so.
I'm sure we'll find plenty to talk about.
Yeah. So, all right.
Fighting a cough here. It isn't COVID, though. So.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Everyone take care. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.